Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Nutritional Revolution podcast. Today, we have for you guys Dr. Michelle Barrack. She is an associate professor who teaches nutrition and dietetics in the Department of Family and Consumer Sciences at CSU Long Beach. She's a registered dietitian nutritionist and board certified specialist in sports dietetics, specializing in nutrition for high school and collegiate cross country and track and field runners. Dr. Barrack has researched and published extensively on factors increasing the risk of low bone mineral density and bone stress injury in runners. She also has experience evaluating dietary supplement use among NCAA collegiate athletes and distance runners. She holds a doctorate in nutritional biology from the University of Davis and a master's in exercise physio from San Diego State University and a bachelor's of arts in psychology from the University of California, Los Angeles. It's quite the degree accolades there. What a wonderful person to have on the podcast. This is an amazing episode. Enjoy the listen, you guys. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We have for you guys Dr. Michelle Barrack. We're super excited to have you here today. Thank you so much, Dr. Michelle, for joining us.
Great. Thank you. Yes. Happy to be here.
We're excited because we're going to talk about things postpartum nutrition and bone health and all that stuff. And I can't recall that we've had anybody really do a deep dive in this topic. So we are very lucky to have you as a guest and share some knowledge with us. As our listeners know, we like to start our podcast off with a little two truths and a lie. So I will let you break those down for me, Dr. Michelle.
Okay. So, two truths and a lie, I guess about myself and my background. So, the first one, I have three awesome, amazing, and super energetic kiddos that keep very busy. The other one, in high school, I did three sports: volleyball, endurance running, and endurance swimming. And the last one is I love to bake.
Okay, these are good.
Awesome. Good.
I feel like, I mean, these are all very, very realistic scenarios. We've had people give us really oddball things that
Yeah, I'm not that
seem
creative, so
this is perfect. This makes it harder.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is good. I feel like with a nutrition background, a lot of us love baking or being in the kitchen to some degree. So I feel like that's maybe true. Three sports. I feel like you might be throwing a twist on us with the sports. Like maybe it was a different combo of sports. What do you think, Amanda?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Endurance
Yeah,
running, endurance swimming.
yeah,
Yeah.
like maybe it wasn't volleyball, or maybe it was a different time in your life. I'll go with the sports as the
Yeah. That's what I'm leaning on too. But don't tell us the answer. We'll reveal it and any fun stories that come with all of those at the end of the episode for the listeners. As we jump off, do you want to share with us, Dr. Michelle, a little bit about what got you excited into the type of research you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wasn't student athlete in high school and in college, and I really just appreciated how what I ate helped me feel in terms of
Mhm.
energy levels. I really could tell a difference in terms of how I ate before, during, and after. Um, I remember going into, so I'm an endurance runner. That's like my main sport and area. And before one of my 2 mile meets, when I was running, I had a power bar. And everyone was saying, just this is going to help you. And I actually ate it and I just crashed. That it was
Oh,
not helpful for me at all. And
yeah.
turns out I needed something a little bit more balanced
Mm.
pre-workout. And so that was something that really impacted me. Hydration impacted me. Also, when I ran in college, I was part of a study with Dr. Aurelia Nativ.
Mm.
She's an expert and one of the seminal researchers in the area of the female athlete triad. And she did a research study on our cross country team. And I actually personally found out I had low bone density at the time, and that was definitely impactful. And it was something that I had no idea about
Mm.
and just had not heard about before. So really wanted to further understand. And just that kind of prompted me to study that further
Mm.
as a graduate student. And continue to do that now. So
Amazing, amazing. Were you able to retest your bone density and make changes to that?
yeah, so I did learn a lot about different types of activity, resistance training, and then obviously nutrition, energy availability, hormones, and how all those factors impact bone health so much. And I did get retested, multiple times, and after probably about 10 to 12 years after my initial um, tests showing low bone density, it had increased significantly in a
Amazing.
positive way. So that was really exciting. And but had I not had that initial test, I would not necessarily know that my bone density was low and that I needed to make those changes. So
Right.
that impacted me a lot. And so it's something that I'm really passionate about, increasing that awareness and
Yeah.
understanding
Yeah.
athletes at risk and then what to do to improve bone health.
Yeah. That's great. So you got the opportunity to have the test, and it wasn't because of a broken bone initially or regular fractures or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I did have actually a few bone stress injuries
Mm.
in high school,
Hmm.
but that bone density test particularly was related to being involved in the research study. So
Wow. Yeah. That's
yeah,
great. That's
definitely
great.
was
And
fortunate.
yeah, happy to hear were able to turn that around too with that knowledge. That's fantastic. So with our kind of focus today in the postpartum and maybe even during pregnancy too, if any nuggets come up there. But I know there's an infographic that you worked on that we're going to share in the show notes for our listeners. Do you want to share a little bit about what drove you to maybe like focus in on this like postpartum area? Were you pregnant with your third child?
No, I'm like giving away.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I was had collaborated in the past with Dr. Adam 1040.
Mm,
He's director of running medicine at the
mhm,
Spalding National Running Center, and really just an expert in this area. And he had this opportunity and was actually working with Molly Huddle, a two-time
mm,
Olympian, on
mhm.
this infographic, and um, had asked if I wanted to be involved, especially in the nutrition portion of this infographic. And I really jumped at the opportunity because by that point I had been pregnant 3 times and had, oops, I did.
Maybe you have 4 kids. We don't know.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a number of times. And
Mhm,
I did experience just how challenging it is to keep up with, while being pregnant, while
mhm,
working and trying to maintain being active, nursing while watching a little one and be active and work. And it's very challenging and depleting. And I'm not a professional athlete. So thinking about professional endurance athletes as moms going into this, and there's not a lot of nutritional guidance currently for
mhm.
that very unique population, um, lactation, endurance athletes, and so it really helped me to appreciate this, and I was really excited to be involved in that and learned a lot in the
Yeah,
process of working together on that infographic.
that's great. So with a pregnant woman and then breastfeeding, how do these things like going through pregnancy, growing a human, and then breastfeeding, how does that impact the woman's bone density?
Sure, yeah. So there are, the needs for calcium to support the development of the
Hmm.
baby. There is even more of that need for calcium during breastfeeding. And
Hmm.
so about 300 to 400 milligrams of calcium from the mother is transferred to produce and support that milk production um,
Wow.
on a daily basis. So that's a lot of calcium, and a lot of that calcium actually is coming from the bone density during
Hmm.
that time of breastfeeding. And even increasing calcium intake is not necessarily going to reduce that bone loss during that time.
Wow.
It is really important to get the adequate and recommended intake of calcium, which is 1,000 milligrams per day.
Hmm.
Um, for during breastfeeding and to support that milk production. But that's just a normal part of that breastfeeding period is a loss of about 4 to 7% of bone density.
Wow.
Time.
And is that based off of how long one like breastfeeds for?
Sure. Yeah. So there have been studies to look at the duration of breastfeeding and then how that impacts bone. And so, yeah, the longer the breastfeeding occurs, probably the more bone loss would occur. But it's
Mm,
really, on average, the studies that I had seen is about 6 to 12 months of breastfeeding.
mhm.
And then that is associated with that 4 to 7% loss
Wow.
of bone density. But what's really amazing about our bodies is how we can recover. And
Mm,
so what has been shown is that about 12 months after stopping breastfeeding, that bone density rebounds and
oh,
normalizes. And so there are not a long-term significant impact on bone health as long as there's that adequate energy intake and nutrient intake um, during breastfeeding and then after to support that recovery process.
wow. So from a nutrition and a dietary lens, I guess, what are good calcium rich sources? And then would you recommend also calcium's like supplementation to hit their targets if they can't get it all from food?
Sure, yeah. I think ideally for calcium to get it from food sources, ideally, so that 1,000 milligrams per day is doable with 3 to 4 servings of calcium-rich foods. So dairy foods, but also calcium fortified foods can help with getting to that amount. Calcium supplementation is an option, but just in terms of overall absorption and utilization, and there have been some potential risks associated with calcium supplementation. So I definitely wouldn't supplement that 1,000 milligrams if a woman would want to supplement maybe 300
Mhm,
milligrams per day, but ideally through food sources and getting just 3 to 4 servings spaced out throughout the day
mhm.
will support that calcium intake and their needs.
Yeah. We have a handful of clients that maybe are like lactose intolerant and can't do dairy. And when you mentioned calcium fortified, I've noticed there's a few brands of whether it's like almond milk or oat milk, and they have a good amount of calcium per 8 ounces. I think it was like some of it was like 300 to 450 milligrams in an
Yeah.
8 ounce glass, which is good kind of bang for your buck, I think.
Yeah,
So,
so a lot of the calcium fortified foods really match what you're going to be getting from dairy. And so,
mm,
yeah, like I said, almond milk, oat milk, soy milk, they'll be, contain the very similar amounts. And then yogurt, cheese. But yeah, there are a number of calcium fortified foods, even cereals, fortified cereals,
mhm,
bars. There's a lot of different ways, and green leafy vegetables too
mhm.
are often
Yeah.
for getting calcium. So
Awesome. And then in that window, so talking about that decrease in bone mineral density that occurs with the 6 to 12 months of breastfeeding and potentially actually even during pregnancy, is there any information out there that delays that decrease in bone mineral density with whether it's resistance training or things of that nature?
right, yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's just a lot of research that is needed because I
Mm,
haven't seen any studies that show, oh, if you have resistance training, if you do these things, that's going to limit or delay the amount of bone loss. So I
mhm,
think that's just that bone loss is a part of breastfeeding, especially exclusive breastfeeding, 6 to 12 months. And
mhm,
then really, working to optimize that rebound and regaining the bone density after that time frame. Another, nutrient or set of nutrients that is really important during breastfeeding as well is just getting overall energy and having
mm,
that adequate energetic status to support the hormones. And then because during that time of breastfeeding, there is lactational amenorrhea. And so
mm,
women are not getting their period while breastfeeding, but once the baby will like wean to foods and breast feeding less,
mhm,
um, just maintaining and optimizing energy intake so that they can resume normal menstrual function
mm,
is really important part of that whole process. So, throughout breastfeeding to get adequate energy to support that milk production, because having breastfeeding exclusively can burn up to 500 to 600 calories per day. And
Wow.
thinking about an endurance athlete who's just utilizing that much energy to support milk production and then going and doing intense exercise activities that can burn another 500 to 700 to even 1,000 calories or more per
Mm-hmm.
day, that's a lot of energy in it. So you have to
Right.
be really intentional about getting enough overall energy. Protein needs are higher, fluid needs are higher, various like B vitamins,
Mhm.
antioxidant nutrients, just most nutrients that we consume. When you look at the RDAs for various
Mm.
nutrients, the recommendations, almost every nutrient is higher during lactation, during breastfeeding.
Wow. Yeah. And with the protein requirements, what do you know what that recommendation is during breastfeeding versus maybe not pregnant, like for a normal individual?
Yeah, so the RDA, the recommended dietary allowance for just male and female for adults, is 0.8 grams per kilogram per day. So that can range based on your body size,
Hmm.
but that goes up to 1.3 grams per kilogram.
Mm.
So that's, about like a 50% increase.
Yeah.
Looking at grams of protein per day, it's about 20 to 25 grams more per
Mhm.
day that are
Okay.
for
Yeah.
breastfeeding.
Wow. That's great. And that's super helpful information too for our listeners. So back to kind of the bone health piece of things, is there for an endurance athlete, post giving birth, so postpartum, starting to get back into training, we talked about hitting adequate energy intake. Not sure if, on the studies, we need more studies on resistance training. Anything else that they should be aware of to minimize the risk of bone stress injuries as they kind of like get back into their training?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the type of training and the rate of return, so how quickly they're returning to that training. So really just listening to your body, but also just considering like just an incremental increase in mileage, always considering just the surface. So, just regular types of kind of practices we can do to reduce that load to bone. So softer surfaces and the training shoes that are, being used for the training sessions. Also cross training. So cross training can help to maybe, instead of running every day, running every other day and having that cross training day to just limit that impact and that loading as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's ways of getting back into conditioning without just having that additional loading, especially at a time where the bone may be more vulnerable because of that bone loss during that time frame.
Yeah. Wow. Did, out of curiosity, did you test your bone density through your pregnancies at all?
No, I haven't. I actually
Okay.
need to again.
Yeah.
Like it's been so busy and but that's actually on my list right now. So yeah, I have not. So that's a good question.
Yeah. That's
Be
just
like a case
curious.
study.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we talked about changes in nutrients, and essentially it sounds like a lot of your nutrients all need to be bumped up, protein, fluids, for the postpartum athlete, and then energy just in and of itself to support, well, avoid the, our listeners should be familiar with REDS and the female athlete triad and Leah and those terms, but because we've had several guests in that area to keep the bone in a good place and recovery in their sport. But as a new mom, maybe in being like struggling with the time constraints and maybe they're a brand new mom. This is not the maybe it's the second or third, who knows? But in their hand, they're juggling a lot. Are there any simple kind of impact nutrition strategies that you suggest to ensure they are meeting their needs? Like, should they be basing their like meals off of their hunger cues, or should they be, eating more than they think, or how do you suggest they kind of go about that?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, especially for postpartum women who are breastfeeding, so there's that increased demand for nutrients and energy to support milk production and exercise training, doing regular endurance exercise. That's a lot of energy that they're burning, and probably maybe even up to 3,000 calories or more per day are their overall energy needs.
Wow.
So with that, it's just important to be really intentional about getting that caloric intake throughout the day, which can be really hard when you have such a demand of, doing your job and watching little kiddos and,
Mhm.
baby. And so it's really challenging. And so just in terms of the high impact practices is just having a plan of what are like easier go-to foods that are
Mm.
higher in energy, so more energy dense foods, and then also nutrient rich foods.
Mm.
Things where you don't necessarily have to eat a lot, but you're going to get a lot of nourishment out of that. You're going to get a lot of calories out of that.
Mhm.
And then you can, work on that, spreading that out throughout the day through meals and snacks. Some examples are, just sandwiches, wraps with like a nut butter or spread,
Mhm.
things that, again, like lots of energy, lots of
Yeah.
nutrients. Greek yogurt, that's going to have a lot of protein. You can put
Mhm.
some dried fruit on that, honey, again, like nuts and seeds. So again, just these foods that are going to be higher in energy density. Dairy, full fat dairy is going to have both that calcium, it's going to have some protein, and it's going to have more energy.
Mm.
Any way that you can, instead of people talk about cutting calories, adding calories and
Yeah.
getting the most out of what you're eating and making that snack and meal really count in terms of
Mhm.
that caloric amount and the nutrient amount.
Yeah.
There's ways of having portable snacks, like
Mm.
snacks that are shelf stable, that, like chocolate milk, instant
Mm.
breakfast, like things that you can just pack and have with you in the car. And like I remember when my kids were smaller, I would just often just driving would be an eating time for me because
Mm.
it was so hard to eat while watching the kids,
Mm.
or I would like make a meal or coffee and then get distracted and then get cold, and it's just hard.
Yeah.
So driving often would be an eating time and I could just
Mhm.
eat and focus a little, so just finding those times where you feel like you can plan, prepare, and then eat throughout the day. And
Mhm.
really what works for one person isn't going to work for the other. So just to find what works for you, what meals you enjoy, what meals are going to be nourishing and energizing.
Yeah, that's great. And so kind of touching on the energy availability topic too with the postpartum is in a non-postpartum athlete, if we see the number on the scale or the body getting a lot smaller, we know that they're not in energy balance. We know that they're in an energy deficit, and that can be clear. But when someone is postpartum and they are losing some of that baby weight or goodness, like the fluids are shifting in their body and all that stuff, is there a rate of loss that is normal, or is there a rate that's too extreme that someone should be keeping an eye on to make sure they're not driving too far into that like low energy availability state while postpartum and breastfeeding?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's a great point. And that's kind of part of what makes this such a unique phase, because that weight loss is part of this phase as well,
Hmm.
because it's coming from a period of weight gain and
Mm.
then that kind of shift back to your body being
Hmm.
kind of more normalized. And yeah, so like a typical rate of weight loss, it will be a little bit more rapid initially,
Hmm.
but around a half pound to a pound potentially per week, every few
Mm.
weeks.
Hmm.
Again, it's very individualized and it can
Yeah.
depend on for each person. And it just uh, really what is recommended at this time is to avoid dieting, avoid restriction, avoid limiting foods, and really like avoiding, okay, trying to restrict to lose weight, focusing on nourishing for what your body needs to do. And because again, in the context of breastfeeding, being active, the needs are so high. And so just supporting those needs around the time of recovery, that's what's going to lead to what is that healthy amount of weight loss for that individual. So yeah, again, it is so individualized, and there are other cues in terms of energy levels, and you can do various like biomarker assessments as well to look at nutrient status, iron, vitamin D. So yeah, so it's again individualized, and really limiting that dieting or restriction, or limiting foods or food groups during that.
Okay. And are there any other signs that the postpartum athlete should look for or be aware of that would indicate low energy availability? I know, again, with a non-postpartum, right, potential loss of menstrual cycle would be a sign, but again, if they're breastfeeding and they have, do you call it lactation amenorrhea?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if that's happening kind of naturally, is there any other signs that they would notice if they were under fueling?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think just overall feeling depleted and run down and fatigued, if maybe they're getting sick more than usual, or just overall those signs of energy, losing their hair, that's the thing to kind of look out for potentially with kind of lower nutrient status. So skin changes, those are things to look at that can be affected by energy deficiency, especially if it's more severe, or nutrient deficits. But yeah, I think there's still a lot that we need to learn about this
Yeah.
space, and kind of, especially again, in the context of like elite endurance training and high level endurance training, and supporting breastfeeding.
Yeah, yeah. Would they notice like low milk supply at all if they were under fueling?
That's a good question. There's a lot of factors that affect milk supply. So, hydration and latching, and the frequency of feeding. So, but yeah, potentially that could. But yeah, again, our women can continue milk production even during that kind of more dramatic weight loss time. So, it's just about getting adequate energy and fluids at the same time
Yeah.
that's occurring. So
Okay. And is there a fluid recommendation for
yeah,
postpartum?
yeah. So fluid needs are much higher for during breastfeeding. So it's about 1 liter more per day to support
Wow.
breastfeeding. So for adult women not pregnant or breastfeeding, it's about 2.2 liters, I believe, are what the fluid needs, not overall fluid intake from beverages and food, but from just like water intake.
Okay.
Fluid intake is about 2.2 liters per day, and then for lactation is about 3.1. So it's about 900 to 1,000
Wow.
milliliters
Yeah.
per day. So yeah, it's very significant, and again, just needing to be intentional about getting enough fluids. And I remember feeling like I was drinking a ton of fluids and still feeling really like I wasn't getting enough. So,
Yeah.
and then add on top of that exercise and all the fluid loss with exercise,
Right.
just really, yeah, this just two factors that are really increasing needs. And again,
Right.
really needing to be really intentional about getting enough.
Is there a need to increase the electrolytes in those fluids as well, or not as much?
Not as much above what would be needed for exercise.
Okay.
So, yeah, the sodium, especially requirements, to my knowledge, are not higher or in lactation and with breastfeeding. But yeah, definitely to be in touch with the needs and the losses with exercise training.
Yeah. So we don't know any sweat test data on
Yeah.
postpartum athletes versus non-postpartum athletes. That would be
It'd
interesting
be
if,
interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm not aware of that.
their
Very
sweat losses were different.
cool.
Um, does hydration status play a role in the bone health and the bone recovery process, out of curiosity?
Again, yeah, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Fluids and hydration are extremely important in terms
Hmm.
of just maintaining adequate blood volume and everything that comes of that. But just in terms of the hormone regulation as it relates to energy availability and bone health, not as much, yeah, impacted by fluids as much as, or unless those fluids are containing energy and you're getting energy
Right.
through beverages. But yeah, the hydration and fluid in and of itself,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. And then we talked about well, maybe we talked about necessary vitamins and minerals or changes in those, not and some maybe not solely you getting all 1,000 milligrams of calcium from a supplement. Are there any supplements that you do recommend for a postpartum athlete that is concerned about their bone density, or just making sure they're hitting the mark? Would a multivitamin be beneficial, or is that safe when you're breastfeeding? Any thoughts,
Yeah,
suggestions there?
yeah. So I know that it is sometimes recommended to maintain the prenatal
Oh
vitamins
yeah.
in the postpartum period because really, I mean, again, B vitamins, antioxidant nutrients, so many of our micronutrient needs are elevated in lactation or to support breastfeeding.
Hmm.
So that can help in terms of just optimizing overall nutrient intake. I mean, largely if you're getting enough energy, you're also, because your energy needs are increased. And so the foods that you're eating contain the vitamins and minerals. So ideally you're getting all those vitamins and minerals as well through food.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's something that could help just optimize and to maintain the prenatal vitamins, potentially through that breastfeeding period.
That's great. Did
Vitamin D is another one also where vitamin D insufficiency or deficiency is, um, you know, that is relatively common
mm,
in pregnancy. And so that's something, taking a vitamin D supplement, it could definitely be beneficial because we have just there's so few foods that naturally contain vitamin D, and depending on sun exposure, other factors may be
yeah,
at risk potentially for low vitamin D status, which we know also helps in terms of our bone health.
that's awesome. And is that vitamin D3 that people should look for in particular, or?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's vitamin
Okay.
D3. Yeah.
Perfect. And then I'm looking at any of the listeners are watching the YouTube version, or Dr. Michelle has a great backdrop, which is this colorful like fruit and veggie spread. It looks amazing. And it made me think with your pregnancies, or whether you have postpartum or athletes that are pregnant and soon to be postpartum, do you recommend any of the kind of like pre-prepare a bunch of foods and freeze them kind of for the busy, chaotic, like not a lot of sleep kind of first little bit of postpartum period?
Yeah, as much as you can prepare like larger meals in advance, planning in like larger portions
Hmm.
and cooking for the week can be really helpful just to do it all at once and then have it either to freeze or in the refrigerator to have for just the whole family throughout the week. So yeah, definitely love preparing meals and yeah, I made a big amount of chili last night and we're having it all throughout the weekend just here and there, so definitely, and love the colorful fruits and vegetables for all those
Yeah.
oxidants.
That's great. Yeah, what do you get? Loads of antioxidants and like tomato sauce, right? And the
Yeah.
chili, and so that's a good one. Chilies, and you get your protein, and don't you get some calcium from beans too, right? A little bit, legumes.
Yeah, not as much, more
Yeah.
iron. It's a
Okay.
really iron friendly, iron rich. It helps with
Yeah.
absorbing. So you get iron from beans and then vitamin C, and then we also have some ground meat in there. So it's good
Perfect.
iron and antioxidant
That's
meal.
great.
So Yeah.
Excellent. With the talking about the higher energy demands and of course training, is that something where an athlete should, like in endurance sports, should they be fueling with more during a training session as well, or is it more just like hit your targets as best as you can at the end of the day?
Mhm.
Or would they notice those needs more for any reason during their training session?
Yeah, not that I know of as much like that the demands increase during training.
Hmm.
Just really important to be getting the adequate energy just throughout the day. And you don't
Hmm.
to ideally have that within day fasting where you're going
Hmm.
long uh time frames, like over 3 hours, like not getting in any snacks or meals,
Hmm.
'cause that can increase risk of overall energy deficiency and affect potentially that hormone levels throughout the day as well.
Hmm.
So in terms of timing, that would be kind of, I would say, the most important thing to focus on is just not going long periods throughout the day without eating, not
Hmm.
necessarily changes in, to my knowledge, like pre-workout, during training, and post-workout needs.
Okay, perfect. And we talked about supplements, we talked about bone health, recovery, kind of in terms of long-term considerations and the return to sport. You had shared after a year of cessation of breastfeeding, we can get the bone density back. Is that assuming we're also back to our normal training routine? I think you said food wise, if we're getting back dietary, we should be in a good spot, but training too, I would imagine can help.
Yeah, definitely. It depends on the type of training and the overall energy intake, and has, normal menstrual function resumed as well, and the
Hmm.
adequate hormones that would support bone health. But yeah, a lot of exercise training will promote that impact to bone, and resistance training also is very beneficial for bone. Any sort of sports or activities that are more power-based or explosive, multi-directional activities also really beneficial for bones. So dietary factors really influence bone overall energy status and bone building nutrients, but also exercise training can
Hmm.
really help in terms of bone loading.
Perfect, perfect. And then to kind of tie things up a little bit here, is there any other advice you would want to give to postpartum athletes who want to return to their sport and, of course, prioritize their health?
Sure, yeah, it's not always a linear increase,
Yeah.
and that's okay. There's so many just day-to-day things that come up that we can't anticipate, and kids get sick, we get sick, things happen, and so just to have that patience and um, grace for ourselves and for the timeline and just the long-term plan and process. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's so many joyful moments during the day. And if we're kind of just focused on outcomes and results and like, oh, it's not happening as fast as I wanted, that can be challenging sometimes, and so it's more of that long-term journey and long-term approach. And for me, I was also dealing with some like previous injuries, and
Mm-hmm.
finally, like I'm starting to kind of manage some of those and train more. And so it's just like a long-term process, and that
Yeah.
it's okay. And some people go faster than others, which is awesome. And there's so many really inspiring women who, even within first year postpartum, are doing incredible things. And it's so exciting to see
Mm-hmm.
and really inspiring. But also not to compare, because everyone has their own path and time,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's well said. I will circle back to your two truths and a lie, and unless there's
Okay.
any other nuggets you want to share about the postpartum athlete. Um, let's see, you have three awesome, energetic kids that keep you very busy, you said. You did three sports in high school, volleyball, endurance running, and endurance swimming, and that you love to bake. Amanda and I were leaning towards the three sports in high school being the lie. Which one was it?
You are so on.
Oh, yes. Yay.
You're saying I'm
We're
like,
getting good at this.
so yeah, I did not do volleyball. So Amanda, you totally got it.
Yeah.
I did tennis and then I did endurance running and endurance swimming. So
Nice.
the volleyball though is very much in our family. So my
Mm.
husband, he does volleyball. He loves playing beach volleyball. And then my
Oh, wow.
our oldest daughter, who's 11, she's really into volleyball. And
Wow.
so I'm learning. I
Yeah.
can play, but I'm learning, and they
That's great.
yeah, they get me out there. So
Yeah.
it's a
You're in a
really
good spot for it, right?
yeah.
Long
Oh
Beach.
my
Yeah.
gosh, it's
Yeah.
great. There's a lot of like AVP and different tournaments that come out. So we've gone and
Wow.
watched some beach tournaments, which is always really fun too. So
That's great.
yeah.
Awesome.
So,
And you do have 3 kids, so that
yeah.
was accurate. And then what do you love to bake? Like what's your go-to?
Oh, so much. I love baking. So yeah, I mean cookies, brownies. I tried like different breads, muffins,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's mostly cookies. I love making cookies.
Nice. That's great. Do you have, is it chocolate chip your go-to or do you do variations on that or?
Yeah, chocolate chip or like double chocolate chip. And
Mm,
actually, with less eggs available,
mm,
like I like making just like real cookies with all like the ingredients and
hmm.
butter, sugar, all that. But I've been using less eggs and
Mm.
putting in Greek yogurt instead.
Oh, nice.
And they've been turning out amazing. And it's like my kids don't like when I do like substitutes,
Yeah.
but they actually love the Greek yogurt cookies.
That's great.
Really fun. So the last thing I made was double chocolate, like with cocoa powder and Greek yogurt, and they're really good. They're like soft. They're really soft.
Yeah.
They're good. So
That sounds great. Do you kind of do like almost like a 1-to-1 equivalent?
yeah, I kind of just like I know with baking you're supposed to measure everything, but I don't really. I just kind of like do like 2 big
Hmm.
spoonfuls, and it works.
Nice. That's great. That's a great
Yeah.
tip.
And it's vanilla Greek yogurt. And
Yeah.
it's worked. And like, especially our son, he's 8. He's like, these are so good. I'm like,
Oh, that's
"Yeah,
great.
I'm glad that the Greek yogurt's worked. So yeah.
That's awesome. And then what are you working on right now, like research wise?
Yeah, so we're doing a really exciting study with a group of female adolescent runners. The study is called Project FAR, and
Mm,
it's a study looking at energy availability and bone health
mm,
before and after a nutrition education intervention program.
nice.
And one thing that we're really excited about with this project is we're looking at energy availability using doubly labeled water,
Oh,
which is a really accurate method of looking
yeah.
at energy expenditure. And we're also able to, I think, pretty accurately estimate energy intake too. using
Cool.
it. So that's been exciting because I haven't used this method in this way before.
Mhm.
And yeah, the participants have been amazing and they're doing great stuff. And they're also, we're using Aura rings for the study, which has been fun.
Cool.
So that is part of the project also.
That's great. And did you say, is it males and females?
Just the female, yeah,
Just
female
female.
adolescent runners. And
Great.
working with Dr. Kelly Pritchett from Central Washington
Oh,
University.
yeah. Hmm.
And Maddie Ohm also, she's a former professional runner and
Nice.
dietitian, and she's helping us with the lessons, and she's
Oh, that's
really
great.
amazing also.
Yeah.
Done a
Awesome. That's
project.
that's so cool. Do you know when you think you'll have your results or publish?
So we're wrapping up the intervention portion. There's a control portion of the study that I think will continue into the fall.
Okay.
But we're funded in part by ASPDA, the
Oh, yeah.
American Sports and Performance Dietitian Association. And
Hmm.
so we're scheduled to present our results next summer, next May.
Oh, great. Awesome. All right. Well, I'll keep my eyes peeled for that. Awesome. And then where can people find you, follow you, anything you want to share before we tie things up here?
Sure, yeah. So mostly I'm on Instagram.
Mhm.
So actually I don't have I don't
We
remember.
can link your Instagram handle for the
Okay.
yeah.
Um And then just by email too. So I'm happy to provide my email and my Cal State Long Beach email, and any just individual inquiries, happy to follow up at any time.
Yeah.
And then also on Instagram.
Awesome. Do you take on like athletes one-on-one to work with, or are you primarily in the research setting?
I'm primarily with research right now, but
Mhm.
I'm actually going to be expanding this summer to starting to take some clients, which I'm also
Nice.
really excited about.
All right. Well, we will link those in the show notes for the listeners. And thank you again so much for your time, Dr. Michelle. This has been so fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed it. So.